Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today as part of our CCA Outreach series. We are excited to bring you an author interview about a new book dealing with craniosynostosis, one of our most commonly asked questions and topics and syndromes that we talk about at CCA. I am Erica Clauber, the Executive Director of Children's Craniofacial Association, and today I am joined by Dr. Joe Barta, Director of the Cleft and Craniofacial Team at Gillette Children's Hospital, and Cheryl Tveit, the principal writer at Gillette Children's Hospital. And we are excited to talk about this book. Before we go on, I always like to say the session is for informational and educational purposes. It's not intended to diagnose or treat any illness or condition, and no one on the webinar will be offering specific or individualized medical advice, but they will be sharing from their professional experience. For your own medical advice, we suggest that you contact your personal doctor or your craniofacial team. And please understand that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in today's program are solely those of the speaker and do not necessarily belong to the Children's Craniofacial Association, the speaker's schools, employers, organizations, committees, or other groups of individuals. So thank you, Dr. Barta. Thank you, Cheryl, for being here today. I'll let you both introduce yourselves. We can start with you, Cheryl. Tell us a little bit about what you do at Gillette and how you got involved with this book and this series.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Erica. Yep, I have been at Gillette for over 20 years now. My main role there was as a nurse, and in the last 2 years, I took a role as a principal writer with the Gillette Children's Press. And our goal within the press is to create a series of books that will target patients and families with chronic conditions that typically start in childhood and go into adulthood. So we're working towards getting a 9-book series, and this was one of the first books that we worked on in this series. And that has been kind of my role for the last 2+ years at Gillette.
Awesome. Thank you. And Dr. Barta, what about you?
My name is Joe Barta. I am the director of the Cleft and Craniofacial team here at Gillette Children's Hospital. I'm a board certified plastic surgeon, which means I completed my training in plastic surgery. I've been approved by the American Board of Plastic Surgery and then did additional training as well, specifically for pediatric plastic surgery and complex cleft and craniofacial care. I work with a comprehensive team here at Gillette to provide medical care for all aspects of pediatric plastic surgery, as well as complex cleft and craniofacial care.
Dr. Barta, one question I always love to ask our medical providers is, what is your favorite part about working with our awesome craniofacial community?
Honestly, I like to call it a journey. I call it the patient's journey when I first meet families. And everybody's journey is different. The hope with non-syndromic craniosynostosis is that, yes, after the surgery and then the long-term follow-up, it should be, hopefully a one and done surgery. To the more complex ones with a genetic diagnosis, where you know that you'll be looking at multiple surgeries over the years. But being part of that patient's and family's journey, being trusted with their care, welcome into their space for years, from infancy and for a lot of them into young adulthood, is such an amazing feeling. It is such a privilege and honor that families place that trust in me. And I just, at the end of the day, that's what brings me so much joy is taking and walking that journey with them.
Well, we all develop very special relationships with our medical providers. So thank you for sharing that with us. We appreciate that. And we feel the same way back. We're so honored that you all chose to study this and become amazing providers for our families. So thank you. And the book that we're discussing today is called Craniosynostosis: Understanding and Managing the Condition, a Practical Guide for Families. And I was so excited to talk to both of you about this because that's something that CCA is passionate about, getting practical information to families, not only that they can read and digest, but also that they can share with grandparents and family friends, and maybe even people that are taking care of or educating their children. So Cheryl, would you like to tell me a little bit about who this book is intended for, and how they could access it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the books that we're creating within the Gillette Press are intended for an international audience. So while they're written by experts at Gillette, really we're trying to reach a broader audience than just the families and patients that we see at Gillette, and primarily written for parents of young babies and children. However, they do kind of span into adolescence and adulthood, so a broader range. And for some of our patients, that would include the patients themselves being able to get information from the books. And our goal with these books is to get these in the hands of patients and families right at the time of diagnosis so that they have that information from the beginning to go forward. And we're working a couple different angles to get the books known to patients and families. You can buy the books at Gillette, but we're also advertising them and selling them on Amazon. And we partner with McKeith Press. And so they are able to purchase the books through McKeith Press as well. And really just trying to get the books in the hands of the people that we think are going to benefit from it the most.
That's awesome. It's really great to hear. And I noticed too, and we will put the link to the website in this video, so everyone will be able to see that. But I love that there's also a very affordable ebook version, so patients can check that out too if they don't want or don't need a physical copy of the book. That's really helpful. And I did want to highlight for our listeners that one of the things I love the most is I got to scroll through and see there's pictures of children and there's also diagrams. And both of those things are incredibly important when you're trying to understand this condition. So I really liked that feature of the book.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr. Barta, I'll go over to you. Can you tell us a little bit about craniosynostosis? This is definitely not the webinar where we're going into what it is, but maybe just a quick primer on that and tell us if you yourself have a go-to method for correcting craniosynostosis that you prefer or use most often.
Yeah, absolutely. So craniosynostosis is, I kind of like to think about it in two buckets. The one that has a known genetic association to it, and then the one that, at least so far, we haven't found a genetic association, although we certainly do see multiple families with more than one child or maybe a parent who has it. And this book that we wrote focuses more on the non-genetically associated one, just because that's the most common one. It is such a broad topic. It could cover multiple books. But specifically, what is craniosynostosis? The way I like to describe it is if you understand the way the infant's skull is that it's actually multiple bones. And the reason for that is it accommodates brain growth. In the first year of life, everything is growing really quickly. So by having the skull as multiple bones, the brain is pushing those bones apart. The body lays new bone down in between. So really every time the pediatrician is measuring an infant's head circumference, what they're actually monitoring is the brain growth. And what craniosynostosis is usually before the infant is even born, one of those growth plates has fused together prematurely. And then we worry that that can cause some growth restriction on the brain because the brain can't push those bones apart. There are very specific head shapes and things that we see that helps aid the clinician in picking up early on that something is not quite right about the head growth. And from there we can either find the diagnosis and then talk about the workup and the plan with families. To your second question, do I have a specific go-to? It really depends on the age of diagnosis. My philosophy of care is it's my role as the provider to give the information to families in as clear and concise a manner as possible, and then allowing them or helping them to make a decision. I actually find sometimes when they're diagnosed younger, they have more options, whether it's endoscopic surgery, whether it's an open repair, things like springs, distraction, lots of different ones. I think part of that decision-making process, I don't personally have a favorite. I think you really have to take into account what's going on with the family. If they live somewhere really far away and they can't be doing helmeting, then maybe endoscopic's not a great decision for them. I think, in the situation of social media, people often will come in with an idea in their mind of what they need or think they want, but then realize no, that's not the best decision for them. So for me, the best decision is the best decision for the family. and what will be the best outcome for their infant. And every individual case is different.
That is such an amazing answer. I think we agree too at CCA, finding the right option for your family is the best decision. So thank you for showing that that's part of your philosophy at Gillette Children's and yours as a surgeon. It's really important. You have to look at all the circumstances. So thank you for sharing that. And we encourage our families to take that attitude as well. Wonderful. Well, something everyone likes to know when a book is coming out is how long did it take to write this book? Cheryl, you
I
can.
think
Okay.
Cheryl would be the better one to answer that.
Oh gosh. From the time that we started working on this book until the time it was like printed in hand was almost 2 years. So I would say the writing of it took about a year, and then there's the editing and all of the things that go along with it. We were working on multiple books at the same time, and so that probably played into the timeline of it a little bit, as well as we wanted to release a group of books together. And so we had 5 books in our series that were released in December of 2024. This was one of them. And so, yeah, almost 2 years.
Well, wonderful. Well, I like to take that into consideration because anybody who is trying to put something out there, it can take a long time to put together. So thank you for answering that. Another question, this kind of harkens back to something we were talking about just a minute ago. Chapter 4 really goes over the surgical options. And I didn't know, Dr. Barta, if you wanted to add anything about that, or if there's another chapter you want to highlight specifically that families might benefit from.
Mhm. Well, it's a great question, Erica. And really, I think that was one of the more difficult chapters for me as a surgeon practicing in the hospital that I do, where I do have a lot of resources at my, at my fingertips, was how do we make this an educational book that applies to not just individuals in the US, but worldwide who maybe have different types of resources. Maybe their care management is different. It was interesting in getting the reviews from other countries where people are like, what's a well child check? Or, just different things, different algorithms of care. So finding that middle ground of this is what we consider standard of care in the US to, but what are other countries? What's incorporating their standard of care? So in terms of, the surgery itself, we just try to present the options or the types of surgeries that are out there, but at the same time, specifically in the book, really stressing the importance of the family and the patient working together with their local provider for what are their resources. Because to me, the best outcomes are, every surgeon is offering and counseling patients and families to what they know are the best, ways of doing it in their medical environment.
I think that's a very good point. And you bring up another thing that I want to touch on. I love that there's a lot of lived experience woven into this book. And that's something at CCA that we really specialize in. We are a patient and family support organization. And so, Cheryl, can you tell us a little bit about why you chose to include lived experience, I guess, vignettes or stories in the book?
Yeah, so we have that kind of same theme throughout all of our books that are within the series. And it started with the very first book, which Lily Collison wrote. And Lily is a parent of a child with spastic diplegia. He's now an adult, but was a child at the time. And so she had included within her book the medical information kind of combined with her lived experience. And the reviews and feedback that she got on that were just so positive. People really loved to hear what was the lived experience of raising a child with a certain medical condition. And so that is what we're doing with all of the books. In this book, we worked with Heather, and Heather told her story of raising Keegan, who has craniosynostosis. And her story and Keegan's story kind of weave throughout the entire book. And so as you get to different parts of the book, when you see going into surgery or recovering from surgery, playing sports, those kinds of things. You'll see pictures of Keegan and stories about Keegan, which I think just kind of bring it to life. And then at the back of the book, we have a chapter which is all dedicated to vignettes of different patients and families from around the world. So not just Gillette families, these are international families as well. And they tell the story of different types of craniosynostosis. We even have a story in there from a family who has a child with deformational plagiocephaly, which is not a type of craniosynostosis, but can be confused with it. And so we do cover that in the book as well and included a vignette of that. And I think the family stories were probably one of my favorite parts of writing the book, just because getting to work with the patients and families, hear their stories, and then they gave me ideas of things that I could bring back to Dr. Barta and say, hey, this family mentioned this. Do you think we need to talk about that? And they just kind of brought some of those things to life that, maybe we wouldn't have thought about were as important to highlight in certain areas of the book. But it was apparent when you met with the patients and families that they wanted to talk about certain aspects of the care of their child with craniosynostosis. So yeah, I think they add a powerful component to the book. And we've heard from a few people that they will just like go through and skip and read just the family stories first and then come back and read the medical content of the book. So
Yeah. I think that's so important. I mean, obviously working in the space that I work in, I see parent to parent or caregiver to caregiver stories really help you ground yourself along the timeline. And obviously the medical part is necessary and so important and cannot be understated, but it's kind of that growing up with, and I love that some of the chapters are called growing up with non-syndromic or syndromic craniosynostosis, that helps you see beyond the surgery. The surgery dominates so much of those early months and years, but you really are looking for that hope for the future. And so I also love that there's a little bit more in the book that goes farther into the lifespan. So we appreciate you all being cognizant and putting that into the book as well. All right. So it brings me to my last question. We like to keep these videos a little bit short and digestible for everyone. So to the bottom line, we already spoke about, you can find it online, but what is your dream? What do you hope for this book? And how do you hope that people get it into the hands of others? Should we share it? Should we tell other people about it? Share this video? Just what is your hope for the book? I'll let you start, Cheryl.
My hope would be that everybody and anybody that has a child with craniosynostosis or is caring for a child with craniosynostosis. So you mentioned grandparents, daycare providers, babysitters. I think just having a good understanding of the condition is so helpful. And I also think that even as medical professionals, there's a lot to be learned in this book. Now, I've been a nurse for over 20 years. I've taken care of patients with craniosynostosis. I learned a ton on working on this book, things that I wished I would have known, years ago. And so I think it's important to get that in the hands of anybody that may care for children with craniosynostosis. So that would be my hope and my dream. And like I said, I think at the time of diagnosis is really important because it does kind of bring you through that journey and can kind of help you anticipate what's coming next, what to expect. I think that can kind of ease some anxiety and stress. So that would be my hope.
Yeah, I would mirror what Cheryl said in a lot of those regards. For me, the goal from a patient, family, caregiver perspective is providing them the medical understanding and knowledge in a very sequential fashion. The book is structured in such a way that, if all they want to know, if they're the kind of person who likes to read the end of the story and then go back to the beginning, you can jump through the books and say, okay, what does surgery look like? And then go back and understand the why. Because everyone comes, when they find this diagnosis in their loved one, their child, everyone has a different priority. So for me, being able to navigate easily through this book and identify for the reader what's important to them is important to be able to give them that peace of mind and understanding that they're looking for in reading this book. And from a provider standpoint too, for pediatricians, other individuals that are maybe not the surgeons or the craniofacial specialist, giving them an idea of, okay, if I'm taking care of a patient who has this diagnosis, what did they go through? What is their recovery like? To give them that understanding as well, so they're not as nervous, or it just gives them the information they need to be able to help interact with the patient and the family in a longitudinal way if they are the pediatrician or a primary care provider.
That is wonderful. Thank you both so much for joining me today, for talking about this incredible resource, and for creating something specifically for patients and families that can be shared and used, like you said, truly worldwide. So I appreciate you joining me today. We will absolutely link where to find the book and where to find the whole series. I think it's a fantastic series. So this great work that you're all doing, and we appreciate Gillette's commitment to making these patient resources available. Thank you both.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks, Erica.
And this is part 2 of the Craniosynostosis author interviews. So, Heather, if you would not mind introducing yourself personally and professionally, that would be great to get us started.
Sure. So my name is Heather Comstock, and I am a mom of a craniosynostosis child, and I also work as a physician assistant in St. Paul, Minnesota.
And how did you get involved with the book project?
So my son had craniosynostosis surgery back in 2012 at Gillette Hospital. So I had gone through the whole experience, and I was able to network and meet a lot of cranio families and cranio moms. And through all of that, I was actually closely intertwined with Gillette Hospital because I started up a 5K trying to raise some awareness for craniosynostosis. So with the proceeds from our race, we would donate to Gillette. I also became friends with Dr. Barta. She came through our orthopedic program way back when she was a resident. And through that, I think she had thought of me for being the parent part of this craniosynostosis book.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's something we have definitely talked about in this interview, the parent perspective and the lived experience part. Can you add a little bit why you think that including lived experience in a medical book is so important?
So I think medical books are incredible. The parent part of it, I feel like the lived version of it just really pulls it into people's reality. So it helps them bring it into their own lives and make more sense to them, make it more applicable to what they're going through versus just hearing a lot of medical terms that can be hard to understand for a lot of people. So it brings a personal vibe to the book, and hopefully will be very helpful to a lot of cranio families from this.
I loved the parts that I have read. I've read excerpts from the book, and I think there's so much value to what is inside. And I think that a question that came up for me is having such a medical background. Do you consider that for yourself? Was that an asset, or did it make it worse because you knew exactly what was happening? How did having a medical background affect you as a mom?
So I would say I actually went into full mom mode, and I didn't really want to know a lot of details about every single thing. I work in surgery, and so I know there can be complications with surgery. So I truly just listened to the Gillette staff and what they had to tell me. And after the surgery was done, I did want to know a lot more details, but it was nice to know, ahead of time, I'll just be a mom and be there for my son, and then the medical people can handle everything for me.
Advice. I feel like a lot of people feel maybe inadequate, like they don't know enough, but it's great to hear that you were able to have faith in the medical providers and you didn't feel like you had to do that simultaneously.
Right. Yes. And I will say too, when we were diagnosed, I did go on Google, and it can be such a scary thing to try to do your own research for things. So having this book is, I wish I would have had this book way back when my son was having surgery, because it has more accurate medical facts in there. And now it will have some family views in there as well.
100%, 100%. What was your favorite part of working on the book?
I would say just bringing me right back to where I was. There were a lot of emotions tied with that. There was fear when not knowing what was going to happen. I actually had kept a journal way back when, so I was able to go back and read the journal I had written. So I had accurate details for the book, which worked out really well. So it just really brought me back. A lot of emotions tied to it.
It wasn't too far, it's recent history, but it's still in the life of a child. 2012 can be a long time. So I'm sure you kind of
Right.
went back through it all and got to relive some of those moments. Scary and heartwarming, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yep. And now my son is 13. And so actually kind of reliving some of it with him and explaining what what he had gone through and how we felt during this experience. He had fun reading the journals and now reading the book, and he was able to contribute a little portion to the book as well. So he's enjoyed all of this too.
That's awesome. That is very, very cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of your son and being a part of what we call the facial difference community, I know craniosynostosis sometimes is more of or more of a skull difference than a facial difference, but what is your favorite part about being a part of the craniofacial community?
So I would say my favorite part is just being able to be there for the Cranio families. It's a scary time. And knowing that other people have gone through it is really what helped me through it. So I was able to connect with a couple of people who have had children with craniosynostosis, and they were able to kind of walk me through the journey as well. So that makes a huge difference. And I'm just honored to be able to support the Cranio families who are going through this as well, and let them know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and there's tons of help available out there if they have questions. And I always tell them, make sure you're talking to your craniofacial team, because that's the number one place to go get any information. But we're here for the more emotional side of things to support them.
Absolutely. That is excellent advice. It is wonderful to have both, to have a medical team that you really trust and that they have that care back for you, but also to have, just everyday average people who are going through it with you. Both things I think are important, and they serve different roles, but nurture different parts of the soul too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wonderful. And then I guess my last question is, we're really interested in helping get the word out there, because I think the more information that parents with new diagnoses have, the better they can feel more prepared. So, what ideas do you have to help share this book? We welcome any and all of those ideas.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I've already been sharing on social media, of course, sharing the website, that the Amazon link. It's available on Amazon, which is fabulous. The Cranio Care Bears are one of the nonprofit organizations who mail care packages to cranio kids around the world. So they also have posted on their webpage the book that's available. The more people that know, the better, because this is just such an invaluable book to have the medical side and the personal side of it too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
CCA is so thankful for the support we receive from people across the country who count on us and care about the programming we provide. Gifts of any size from our growing virtual audience can help fulfill our mission to support and inspire individuals and families affected by facial differences.